I started writing this Kol Nidre sermon just as the news of COVID-19, the threats of the Delta variant were becoming more pronounced. And like all of us, I'm tired of managing through this confusing time where information changes at the speed of light. I'm tired of the confusion, the anxiety, the uncertainty, and the fear. This has all become too much the norm for all of us. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav said, "The world is a narrow bridge. The important thing is not to make yourself afraid." But on days like this, I ask God, does our bridge really need to be this narrow? With so much depression, fear, and anxiety, how do we make our journey through life easier? First and foremost, we can acknowledge to ourselves and to those who care about us that we are struggling. Now, like many of you, I enjoy sports. And early this summer, I found myself reading about the tennis player Naomi Osaka. Naomi withdrew from competing in the French Open after a dispute about a requirement that she appear at an assigned press conferences following her matches. And she cited her history of depression, social anxiety. She described how after a tournament loss, insensitive reporters would badger her about which of her strokes had let her down. Naomi also skipped Wimbledon to continue focusing on her mental health. Her brave decision to reveal this sensitive issue made us all, I think about how to express our personal need for self-care and for support of mental health challenges. Exactly how do we become public advocates for our personal needs? My thoughts deepened when the gymnast Simone Biles, I hope I'm pronouncing your name. Anyone tell me it's right, wrong? Robert's saying yes. Do you follow gymnastics, Robert? Okay, good. Simone Biles, amazing woman, amazing athlete, but she withdrew from most of her Olympic competition. Simone's withdrawal sent shockwaves that were even more pronounced than with Naomi Osaka's decision. And these announcements by these famous athletes of their need to step back runs counter to the typical way we think of athletic heroism. But make no mistake, these athletes are brave heroes. And I found myself applauding these young role models for demonstrating the power and the need for self-advocacy. Before this year's Olympics, I didn't know that much at all about gymnastics, as I just said. I certainly hadn't heard the term the twisties. But as I read Simone's description of how her anxiety resulted in disorientation in space and time, something she called the twisties, I had a new understanding of how dangerous it is for Simone to perform when her body and mind are not aligned. And I learned that for a gymnast, even being slightly off results in serious injury, especially with the difficult gymnastic maneuvers Simone is capable of. Now, most of us will never know what it's like to fly through the air, to have to deal with the twisties. But we can admire how Simone communicated to the world that life is too precious to take unnecessary risks. Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles, two great young athletes, demonstrated for all of us that when we find ourselves on the too narrow bridge, the way to keep ourselves safe and unafraid is to choose life. I think about the stories of Naomi and Simone, about our own experiences with COVID-19. I think about all of the pain, the suffering, the anxiety, the challenges too many have been burdened with. I think for all of us, traveling across life's narrow bridge has been our own form of the twisties, a physical and mental disorientation that affects us in similar and dangerous ways. Recently, I went to Sloan Kettering for my regular 4-month scan and felt something again that might be akin to the twisties. And then I felt it even more strongly when I traveled to California to see my elderly father, who's rapidly deteriorating from Parkinson's disease. For me and my father, our feelings of life's uncertainties seem akin to the twisties. What do? We must choose life. In the Torah, the words are spelled out clearly. God puts before us life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life. Now, sometimes I hear God's words in a booming voice. Life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life. But sometimes I hear God's words whispering softly and with assurance. The still small voice quietly and constantly encouraging, choose life. This divine imperative appears only one time in our Torah, but choose life threads through the entire fabric of our Judaism. It's intrinsic to our sacred Jewish values, to our philosophy of how we create meaning in our lives. We begin by being inspired by Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles. Like them, we need to affirm out loud and with clarity that we're walking on a narrow bridge. And in order to choose life, we need to openly say what we need. Life is challenging. It's tempting to give up. It's tempting to obsess and to grieve over our struggles. But we have a choice. We have the power to choose life. This summer, I witnessed another amazing example of someone who chose life. Roseanne enjoys the show America's Got Talent. Anyone like this show? Right? A lot of hands, I hope. She records every episode. And one night, I came home, I was late, I was tired, but she insisted I watch the audition of someone. I wasn't really in the mood, but I am very glad Roseanne insisted, because I watched a young woman named Jane come onto the stage. She goes by the stage name Nightbird. She auditioned with an original song called It's Okay. And before she sang Nightbird, Jane answered some introductory questions from the judges. One judge simply asked, "What's your song about?" Jane answered, "My song, It's Okay, is the story of the last year of my life." Another judge asked, "And who are you here with?" And Jane responded, "I'm here by myself." This judge then says, "It's okay," and gives a small laugh before saying, "And what do you do for a living?" And then Jane said, "I haven't been working for quite a few years. I've been dealing with cancer." Consternation shows in the judge's face, and he says apologetically, "Oh, sorry." But Jane looks at all of the judges and assures them, "No, it's okay. I'm okay." Another judge speaks, "Can I ask you how you are now?" And Jane shares, "The last time I checked, I had some cancer in my lungs, my spine, and my liver." This judge then blurts out, "So you're not okay?" And Jane acknowledges this, but says, "No, not in every way. But it's important that everyone know that I'm so much more than the bad things that happened to me." And then in Nightbird's breathy, beautiful voice, she sings her poignant song with this chorus, It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. If you're lost, we've all been lost, and it's all right. This 30-year-old woman got Judge Simon Cowell's golden buzzer for her audition, which meant a straight pass to the live shows. But as the date for the live competition approached, Jane had to withdraw from the show because her health had taken a turn for the worse. She needed all her energy to fight her cancer. She didn't compete because she needed her focus to be on her physical needs. Jane is an inspiration. What we learn about her from the audition and from her song is here is someone choosing life. And as she said at the time of her audition, you can't wait until life is no longer difficult to decide to be happy. Jane Nightbird said recently, I hope to feel better real soon. I've been beat up, but I've still got my dreams. I'm planning my future, not my legacy. Another inspiring young person who chooses life. Naomi, Simone, Jane, all three contemporary examples of how to choose life. Viktor Frankl is from an older generation. He was a slave laborer at Auschwitz. He watched his fellow inmates and wondered what it was that enabled certain prisoners in the concentration camp to maintain a sense of hope and inner strength while others lost their will to live. He discovered that those who survived were able to find meaning in their suffering and purpose in their life. Those who accepted the Nazi cruelty as the measure of life soon died. Victor wrote his classic book, Man's Search for Meaning, right after the war. And he argues that while we can't decide the conditions of our existence, we always possess the freedom to interpret those conditions and the freedom to choose our response. Most of us know people who have a meltdown because of the slightest disappointment or setback. And we also know of those who've suffered immeasurably and yet managed to maintain their optimism and hope. In any challenge, our attitude is our choice. We always have freedom to shape our own experience. No matter what happens, we're always able to take responsibility for the kind of person we choose to be. Even in the concentration camp, Viktor Frankl writes that there were people who maintained their humanity by compassionately sharing the crust of a teeny ration of bread with a starving comrade. People who still noticed in a concentration camp a beautiful sunset, still recited their prayers at bedtime. The Nazis could steal everything, Victor writes, but not the freedom to be a mensch. Even when life brings loss and pain, even when life is out of control, we always have choices. We can choose to sink into bitterness, rage, and despair, or we can choose to transcend the losses and rise to a life of purpose and hope. We can choose to nurse resentment and bitterness, or we can reach out with love and with caring. Let me share another story about a young woman. She lost her big brother. Her brother had a playful zest for life, but he hid the serious challenge of depression from his sister. He had always smiled and joked with his sister, but he didn't share with her what was really going on. He didn't seek out the support he needed. And tragically, his inner demons led him to take his own life. Soon after losing her brother, this young woman moved to California to live with her best friend, to receive the support and love she knew she needed. The still grieving sister told her friend that Peter Pan was her favorite Disney character, and that she always thought of her big brother as if he were one of the lost boys because he was so much fun. Her best friend suggested they go to Disneyland together and ride Peter Pan's flight. They did so, and after the ride, the sister spotted the actor who played the Peter Pan character. And he noticed her studying him, and he came to her. He made a show of wiping cooties off her shoulders with an imaginary leaf. She looked at this cast member playing his part and said, "I lost my brother this year. He was always a kid at heart. It's really special for me to meet you right now, because somehow I always thought that my brother's version of heaven would be Neverland." The policy at Disneyland is that the actors who play the characters are never supposed to speak. But in this case, Peter Pan broke the rule of silence. He said to her, "Neverland did get a new lost boy today. I think your brother made it to Neverland." And the little sister, comforted by his words, hugged Peter Pan and wept. And Peter Pan let her cling to him, whispering over and over, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." This young woman who shares the story of an encounter with Peter Pan shows us the need to choose life by seeking help. Her best friend offered love and support, and the stranger playing the role of Peter Pan was sensitive to the sister's need and brought true magic to the moment, returning that lost boy to the place in his sister's heart where she most needed him to be. Nightbird saying, "It's okay if you're lost. We've all been lost, and it's all right." It's okay to be lost if we succeed in choosing life. It's okay to walk on the narrowest of bridges if we reach for support and if we communicate our needs to others. No one is ever lost if there's another who can fill his or her need for love, compassion, empathy, and connection. When we hurt, when our world is in a state of the twisties, we must not collapse into a state of fear. We must not give in to our pain and grief. We must not suffer in isolation. We're not the only one who knows pain. Other people understand. Other people care. Other people will help. And we must not suffer alone. We need to say out loud, "I choose life, and this is what I need." We need to say out loud, "I choose life. I'm planning my future, not my legacy." We need to hold hands, share tears, lift our voices, and cry together. We choose life when we use a positive attitude to lift ourselves up. We choose life when we use a positive attitude to lift others up when they need that extra tug of love. None of us can change the human condition, but we have the power to make our world more gentle and more kind. The people of Israel came to Moses when he was 120 years old and soon to die. They came before Moses and they heard the divine truth. God puts before us life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life. We are commanded to live and love. We are commanded to hold hands and never let go. On the narrow bridge in the midst of darkness, there is the guiding light of purpose, love, and joy. El Rachamim, God of compassion, help us to cry out loud and to hold each other gently. Help us to reach out to those who can be of support to us, and help us support those who are suffering. Give us the ability to choose life, to always extend our love, to say the kind word, to embrace those who need our support. God of eternal peace, help us choose life each day, every day of our lives, and let us say, Amen.